Welcome everybody to the Wilmette Institute's first web talk for the year 2017. Today we will have Annette Reynolds, who is located right now at the Louis Gregory Baha'i Institute in South Carolina, give us a presentation on Trudy and the Baha'i spiritual path in South Carolina. And I should add that this is being broadcast live over our Facebook page as well. So if you're having serious audio or video problems for some reason with this particular connection, you can always go to our Facebook page and you'll be able to watch it there as well. To give you a little bit of basic information about the Wilmette Institute, we've been around now for 22 years. We were started in January of 1995 by decision of the National Spiritual Assembly, and it was at the end of January, right about now, so it's been almost exactly 22 years at this point. For our first 10 years, we ran a face-to-face program called the Spiritual Foundations for a Global Civilization, and that was run out of Wilmette. We had anywhere between 40 people and on down to more like 5 or 6 towards the end. We also were doing some online for that particular program over the summer, not over the summer, the rest of the year. However, starting in 1998, we decided to focus more on online courses, and that eventually, of course, became our main area of work. As of today, we've had 10,767 registrations and 396 courses since 1998, and 118 countries represented amongst our student body. That's up by 2 just in the most recent 5 or 6 months. Our students have made countless presentations to classes, study circles, and other kinds of meetings. We've had people appear on the radio as a result of the confidence that they gained from taking our courses. And of course now, in addition to our courses, we have these web talks monthly, and we hope to increase their frequency at some point soon. We're also beginning to do webinars, which are courses that are primarily oriented around live web video, with some online support as well. We're also beginning to publish things on our website, and as of this month, we're beginning to offer credit if people also register at a particular seminary and pay the seminary tuition. So that's a particular announcement we hope to be making soon in order to give people all the details of how that works. To focus now on today, Annette Reynolds is a mother, grandmother, and a career 4-H agent. I was a 4-H student myself once, Annette, and she's now retired from that. She's lived in all parts of South Carolina, has been a Baha'i since 1971, and works every day to live the Baha'i life, and has served the faith in many different capacities. She's also been very concerned about domestic violence prevention, and is now currently working on her second book titled Survivors Thrive, to be published in the spring by Prismatic Dreams Publishing, which will look at battered women, the battered women movement's work and its efforts towards establishing a world without domestic violence. So I think at this point we will turn this over to Annette, and she can tell us about Trudy and the Baha'i spiritual path in South Carolina.
Thank you for having me on Web Talks. I am so happy to be here. I'm not a historian. I'm a storyteller and encourager now, not a 4-H agent anymore, so I'm a storyteller and encourager now. I want to dedicate the program to the persons who contributed to the story and have since passed on. Lily Abercrombie, Charlotte Brown, Gail Curran, Dorothy Ellis, Barbara Gim, Jonathan Graham, Helen Kentz, Sarah Madison, Ursula Richardson, Janie Snow, Nancy White, Gladys Ziegler, and Alberta Dees. About half of these were pioneers, and I'm so grateful they came to South Carolina. And the other half were South Carolina natives, including Dr. Alberta Dees. It was Alberta that told me Trudy's story was going to become everyone's story. This story started being Memories of Trudy, and it became Trudy and the Baha'i spiritual path in South Carolina. So, at first, I talked with her family members and learned that Estella Gertrude Ellis was born in Salt Lake City, weighing 2 pounds. In 1924, Premature babies did not survive, but survive she did, and she attended public schools in Salt Lake City. Trudy often said it was hard being a minority in Salt Lake City when she was growing up. The Ellis family first heard of the Baha'i faith when a nice white lady spoke at their African American Episcopal Church. We think that might have been Ruth Moffett, because Ruth Moffett actually did speak at many churches in Utah. The family agrees that the first person to directly teach the faith to the family was Marguerite Sears, and Trudy's mother, Isabel, declared her faith in 1943. In 1946, Trudy married Freddie White, and soon after, the couple moved to Los Angeles, California. At that time, California was still the land of opportunity and hope for Negroes. Trudy declared her faith in 1948 and became a member of a very active Los Angeles Baha'i community. In her sister Dorothy's words, there was always something going on and everything was very exciting. Trudy would start her day by saying, "What can I do for Baha'u'llah today?" That became her habit for the rest of her life. Next slide is Trudy and William Sears. During the 10-year crusade, Trudy, like other Baha'is, wanted to pioneer, and she prayed to go anywhere but the Deep South. Despite her prayers and efforts, the opportunity didn't come until 1972. As I collected memories of Trudy from others, it quickly became everybody's story. I think Trudy wants it that way, so it's not just about her, but about the work she and so many others did in South Carolina. Since South Carolina was a place Trudy thought she would never live, what brought her here? In 1960, the Southeast Regional Baha'i Summer School moved to Penn Center on St. Helena Island, formerly called Frogmore. In 1966, the Goals Committee often met at Penn Center and reported 2 local spiritual assemblies in South Carolina, one in Greenville, one in Frogmore. Alberta attended a summer school at Penn Center and was set on fire. In her story in the book, she exclaims, "I thought I had died and gone to heaven." In 1969, she started teaching her family and friends in Adams Run, South Carolina, an individual initiative, if you will. An article in the American Baha'i reported 19 declarations in 36 hours in Adams Run, where large-scale South Carolina enrollments began. Canada Carr's Mr. Inakalinga spoke from Alberta's porch, where 200+ people gathered in her yard. We know it was 200+ because they set out 200 chairs, and people were standing and sitting on cars, so it was more than 200 people. He also spoke at Penn Center in 1970. His Conversations with the Deep South Committee was reprinted in the American Baha'i in September of 1970. South Carolina was also graced by the visits of 3 other hands of the cause. Dr. Muhajir visited twice, in 1972 and 1976, as well as Mr. William Sears in 1973 and Mr. Fruiton in 1976. I want to read to you a quote from Abdu'l-Baha. Oh, that I could travel, even on foot and in utmost poverty, to these regions, and raising the call, Ya Baha'u'llah, in cities, villages, mountains, deserts, and oceans, promote the divine teachings. This, alas, I cannot do. How intensely I deplore it. Please God, ye may achieve it. On that note, let's go back to 1971 and Operation Conquest, properly known as the Dillon Project, which was poorly understood. The Deep South Committee was formed at the Southern Teaching Conference in Chattanooga, Tennessee in 1969. This committee got 5 chiropractors and their families together to consult on a teaching project for South Carolina. The project was to occur on the anniversary of the sustained teaching in Adams Run. 6 chiropractors and their families living in South Carolina actually participated in a very organized project with grand expectations to reach all strata. They were the Ross, the Youngs, the Thomases, the Grimsleys, and the Jensens. The call went out for travel teachers. Scores of people came from all over the United States, and they were housed and fed, and children's classes were held. There were meetings every evening, spaces for reflection, if you will, and informational meetings for those who wanted to learn more about the faith. The informational meetings were held in the Woodman of the World building that was rented by Dr. Jordan. These Baha'i warriors, as Roger Rolfe called them, went out with their eyes open. They were not naive. It was dangerous work, promoting and living racial harmony in a newly and forcefully integrated South Carolina. Integration is not unity. It's not even tolerance. And there were incidents with the KKK. The Baha'is were to cover all towns within a 30-mile radius of Dillon in North and South Carolina, starting in Dillon. Each person had a notebook with maps and an area to cover and space to record information on the people they met, like contact information, directions, what was discussed, invitations to the meetings. And there were thousands of declarations. Shoeboxes full of declaration cards were sent by bus to the not yet computerized National Spiritual Assembly. And like the birth of a baby, it was joyous, time-consuming, difficult, and totally worth the effort. The Universal House of Justice, in a cable dated 31 January 1971, sent to all national spiritual assemblies, noted the acceleration of enrollments in the United States. Joyfully announced Baha'i World process entry by troops rapidly accelerating United States, evidenced by enrollment 8,000 new believers, South Carolina, course 6 weeks, campaign raising number new believers, entire country 13,000 since Rizwan. Process gathering momentum, indications similar development occurring new areas, North, South America. May valiant workers, faith, toiling throughout world, gain confidence, added strength. These uplifting victories won in his name reap similar harvests, home fronts, all continents. The large-scale enrollments of believers in the Baha'i faith from a letter printed on page 65 of Messages from the Universal House of Justice, 1968-1973. Consolidation was even more difficult. without the framework for action we have now. Perhaps this is one of the experiences that help develop things like consolidation tools and computerization of enrollments that we have now. In January of 1972, Operation Gabrielle, one place Dr. Muhajir spoke, had many goals. Among them was recruiting full-time Baha'i volunteers for service. 90 volunteered for some kind of service, only 19 volunteered for full-time service. South Carolina Victory Conference launches Operation Gabrielle. No mother would abandon her child during the helpless days of early childhood. We must not abandon the many thousands of new Baha'is who responded to the message of Baha'u'llah less than a year ago, who await further knowledge of Baha'u'llah and the institutions and principles upon which his new world order will be built. This was published, this is a snippet of an article printed in February of 1972 in the American Baha'i. Here's another quote from Abdu'l-Baha. All those who seek truth in the heavenly kingdom shine like stars. They are the fruit trees laden with choice fruit, like seas full of precious pearls. Trudy moved to South Carolina in September of 1972 to serve this sea of newly declared Baha'is and waiting seekers, and fell in love with South Carolina and South Carolinians. To her, all were these precious pearls, and she jumped in heart first. Officially, she served in the office of the Southern Regional Teaching Committee, but she didn't just work in the office. She seemed happiest going on home visits, establishing friendships, and deepening the friends. In 1972, the American Baha'i reported the Louis G. Gregory Baha'i Institute was dedicated, officially opening on Sunday, October 22nd. This slide shows Mr. Woodrow Jackson. He was the first local person to declare his faith in Baha'u'llah, the first local person around the Baha'i Institute in the PD area. Two of his children, many of you will remember Mary Beckman, the singing cook, and John Jackson. 11 of his grandchildren and 21 of his great-grandchildren all declared. They are only one of the generational South Carolina native families. The Abercrombie's, the Smalls, and Jesse Ixman's family are 4 and 5 generations of Baha'is. In 1976, when Operation Outreach was launched, Trudy was a staff member. This program is a joint effort between the South Carolina Regional Teaching Committee and the Louis G. Gregory Baha'i Institute. This program has resulted in the reactivation of communities and the declarations of many new believers. The goals of the project are to give the healing message of Baha'u'llah to everyone in a 30-mile radius of the Louis Gregory Institute, to build and consolidate 5 new local spiritual assemblies around the Institute during this Baha'i year, establish 18 new localities where Baha'is reside, and to assist in the strengthening through children's classes, deepenings, firesides, feasts, and intercommunity activities, the quality of Baha'i life in this area. The emphasis is on the word assist, not take over. We need your help. By 1977, Trudy reported on Operation Grassroots as Secretary of the South Carolina Regional Teaching Committee. Operation Grassroots is to act as a stimulus for assemblies, district committees, groups, and isolated believers to arise out of their lethargy and teach the cause once again, only this time reaching all strata. With this plan, there is a job for everyone wanting to serve in whatever capacity they feel comfortable. All the teaching and consolidation plans mentioned were following the plans of the Universal House of Justice and the National Spiritual Assembly. In fact, this plan, Operation Grassroots, was planned by the South Carolina Regional Teaching Center. Before that, the National Spiritual Assembly planned all the teaching and consolidation plans in consultation with the South Carolina Regional Teaching Committee. The National Spiritual Assembly decided that they were not the planners anymore, and the Baha'is in South Carolina were ready to plan their own teaching and consolidation plans. In 1985, during Project Tabarsi, Trudy was one of the volunteer staff members at the Louis Gregory Baha'i Institute. Project Tabarsi, 1985 issue of the South Carolina Pulse line. It is proposed that this project lasts for 11 months from June of this year until April of 1986, the end of the 7-year plan. This 11th month period corresponds to the 11th month siege of Fort Tabarsi in Iran and the 19th century, from which emerged some of the greatest heroes of the faith, such as Mullah Hussein and Qudus. Carrie Murphy reports approximately 2,500 new believers came into the faith during 1984-1986, including many now adult children of the mass taught believers from the 1970s teaching campaigns. Carrie Murphy in the book describes Trudy, Gail Kerwin, and Amber Spahn as never complaining about driving long hours to teach and deepen believers. She could ask them to do anything and always got an instant response to Baha'u'llah's work. This was Trudy's way of operating. This is how she inspired others. I have an early Ruhi book that Trudy was using, and I know she used several. This, the one I have, has her signature up in the left-hand corner. It is small. It is 6 by 8 inches and only covers the bob. It doesn't have a date in it, so I don't know when she used it. But we now know that this little booklet eventually became this booklet. Trudy was appointed to serve on the auxiliary board in 1986 and served 2 5-year terms. She seemed to always be ahead of the curve. There were so many inspiring Trudy stories from 1972 when she arrived in South Carolina all the way until she left South Carolina to go live in Georgia for a little while, and then she came back to South Carolina. But she did retire in 1976 from the auxiliary board. She was suffering from Alzheimer's, but even suffering from Alzheimer's, Trudy said there were 2 things she would never forget. One was her granddaughter's green eyes, and the other was Baha'u'llah is who he says he is. There were so many stories. I'm sure I didn't get them all, but for the ones that were sent to me, all I had to do was collect them and put them in chronological order. Putting them in chronological order proved to be challenging, as people's memories of the dates the activities happened were often different. It was also fun, though, to find archival information in newspapers in American Baha'i, information in newsletters in South Carolina that confirmed the dates and the facts that matched the personal stories. It was like putting together a puzzle. We know that you never retire from the Baha'i faith, so Trudy was still inspiring others, probably right up until she passed to the Empire Kingdom. And she and I served in North Charleston on the North Charleston Spiritual Assembly. And during that period of time is when I spent a lot of time with Trudy and heard a whole lot of stories that she had. So I'm going to move to this slide that I'll stop on. This is a slide of the United States showing the Baha'i faith as the second largest religious tradition in South Carolina. Christianity remains the largest religious tradition in every state. In South Carolina is green, showing that enough people identified as Baha'is to turn the whole state green. Perhaps there are some comments or other Trudy stories. Rob?
Yep, I'm putting on my microphone and camera right now. Thank you so much, Annette. And in fact, I already have seen a couple of comments on our Facebook page, so maybe I should read those if you'd like.
Yes.
Emil, for example. And if anybody has comments, we do have a place here for questions, and I'm going to open that up while I think of it. And I don't see any right now, but we also have this Facebook page where we just broadcast it live. And Sue Emil says, Trudy was one of the greatest Baha'is I've ever met. I thank her for whatever goodness I've acquired in my soul. And she adds, Trudy, I love you, I love you, I love you. Thank you for sharing her story and the spirit of her life, Annette Reynolds. So that's very nice. And Sue is down in Belize, if I remember right. Or maybe it's a different Emil, I'm not sure. And she also adds, I do believe, I'm reading it on another computer, you see. I do believe the process of teaching, including expansion and consolidation in South Carolina, built the foundation for the Institute process all over the world today. The ongoing systematic project at the Lewis Gregory Institute seemed to serve as a prototype for the core activities we practice now. And I'm wondering if you have any comment about that observation, about how South Carolina helped pioneer the processes we see now with, maybe not study circles, but certainly you mentioned children's classes and many other efforts to follow up and help consolidate believers.
One of the stories, I think it came from Helen Thomas, we got so many declarations in such a short period of time, it made it difficult for the National Spiritual Assembly to keep records of all those people. So that now that we are computerized, that process has been made easier. And perhaps we didn't know we needed to be computerized until we got so many declarations in such a short time. There's been stories that we were not following the guidance. Well, we were following the guidance. It's just that we weren't ready for 8,000 people to sign declaration cards. I might mention also that during the Dillon Project, all strata was contacted. The fact that many of the people who actually declared were African Americans is just a fact. All strata, all the neighborhoods people went in all neighborhoods. It was very well organized.
Paul Mantle out in California says, what is WLGI's role in serving the faith now?
Wonderful question. We have what we call the South Carolina Enterprise going on right now. And I ended the story in the book with, here we grow again, because that's what we're going to do. We're going to grow again. Where I live in Florence, and we have two pioneers, young pioneers, new to Florence. Well, they're not new now. They've been here almost a year now. And one person who has declared since the enterprise started, and all three of these young men are serving to try to start, or not try, to start junior youth groups. They have we just recently had an expansion phase and knocked on something like 600 doors.
Wow.
To let people know in one community that the Junior Youth Spiritual Empowerment Program is starting in that community. So that's what we're doing now in several areas of South Carolina. One is the PD region, which is the area that the Institute is in. Another is the Charleston region. And another is the Conway region, where we have young people starting training animators, local animators, like the young man that declared, to start junior youth groups in these areas. So we are growing again. As the young people are starting junior youth groups, one of the things that I've been really happy about as an individual is I get to work with parents of the junior youth so that everybody is included in doing something while we're doing this South Carolina enterprise. We're not just doing junior youth programs. We are concentrating on, that's the focus. But we are also doing children's classes in some areas. We're also doing devotional gatherings, especially with the parents. That's what I've been doing is we call them prayer meetings. We're doing devotional gatherings and study circles as well. So we started several study circles. That's what's going on now. The Louis Gregory Baha'i Institute is still a place for training these young people that have come to South Carolina. For them, they have brought some of the young people that they have met as they have gone knocking on doors to the Institute for retreats. The Baha'i Regional Council is having trainings here. We also have had, since the question was what's happening at the Institute, we've had Arts Festival that's going to happen again in May. We have a women's gathering that's happening in March. We are doing things at the Institute.
Fantastic. Elahe asks this question: thank you for bringing the story of Trudy to us. Could you tell us about some of the paths and challenges of teaching the African Americans based on both your experiences and Trudy's?
Let's see. You want to know the past? Well, a lot of the people who declared were in rural areas. Finding them again became difficult. And I don't know how many, there were scores of people who came to South Carolina to travel teach. Not as many stayed. I am very happy that people came and to travel teach and stayed. I think both were needed. However, it became difficult sometimes to find people. We may or may not have had a correct address.
Mm-hmm.
Some people may have given addresses that were incorrect in the first place. And I don't know how many people were directionally challenged like I am, or had a unique sense of direction like Trudy had. Trudy had a unique sense of direction. A lot of people mentioned it. Trudy, you could ask Trudy, where does John Doe live? And she would say, well, you go down the highway until you get to the White House, and then you turn left, and you follow that road until you get to the big oak tree, and you turn right, and then you'll see the house. Well, you arrive, and there are 3, 4 white houses, and there are many oak trees, and you still don't know where you're going. At the same time, one of the stories was, can't remember who sent that story, but they were traveling with Trudy, they were driving Trudy, and they thought they were lost. They were in the woods, they were on a dirt road, woods on either side, and they thought they were lost. And the gentleman driving stopped and asked somebody walking along the road where this person was, or did they know the person they were looking for. And the lady they were talking to was the person they were looking for.
Of course.
So Trudy had an interesting sense of direction. she was really never lost
Yeah.
because she was in Baha'u'llah's hands. Difficulties, some difficulties involved whether or not people needed literacy training. There were some literacy schools open. One in particular I remember was in North South Carolina and is still operating. Finding people was a difficulty. Literacy could be a difficulty, but not always. Engaging people could be difficult. And we're still having some of those difficulties, getting people engaged in especially the Ruhi, the study circles. Engaging people in prayer meetings is not as hard and never was in South Carolina. Just about any time you ask people to pray, they're willing. Children's classes are not difficult. You can find children everywhere. Junior youth are not difficult to find. Animators, harder to find. So we have challenges, but I remember Dr. Arbaugh saying, whatever we're doing, it's going to get easy as long as we learn how to do it. So all we have to do is learn how to do it.
Good. We have another question from Lewis. Thank you for your latest labor of love. It has been suggested that were resources devoted to constructing Baha'i centers, even modest ones, or adapting homes to serve as Baha'i centers, it would have been a big assistance. What do you think? And regardless, what would that seem helpful nowadays?
Well, it depends. I think it depends on what the resources involved are. You know, study circles can be held in homes. Study circles do not have to be large groups of people. And in fact, if I'm not mistaken, 10 is about the optimal number of people in a study circle. So you don't have to have centers, I don't think. We have had a center in Florence. There was a center in Wilmington. I mentioned both of those centers because they both, the resources decreased and those communities decided to sell the centers. So I don't know that it depends on a center, even though in the South, and I know South Carolina better than any place else, in the South, when you arrive new to the South, the first question you're going to be asked is who your people are. Now, if you're new to the South, you're not going to have an answer for that question. So the next question is going to be, where's your church? And that is why many people would think that a center would be helpful. But I think, just remember that the Baha'i faith is something very new. The Baha'i faith is not Christianity. Baha'i faith is a new revelation. So if a center is needed, I think that's great. And we have, what do we have, a national committee that will help you if you help the community decide if they can support a center and how to get it going. So now we have that as a resource to decide whether a center is the best use of resources or something else is the best use of resources. Right now in Florence, the best use of our resources is supporting the pioneers and starting junior youth groups, not a Baha'i center. That's not to say it could be different. It could be different in Florence in the future, but it depends on, I think it depends on the community and the resources.
Philip asks this interesting, well, actually he offers this reminiscence. Annette, this is Philip White. You did a great job. Yeah.
Hey, Philip.
You did a great job. I'm sure Mom and all her dear friends in the Abha Kingdom are laughing, I think, for joy. One short story. I'll never forget when Alberta and Mom published in the local newspaper, Jesus Christ has returned and his name is Baha'u'llah. It took up the whole front, the whole page. I'll go down a little bit here. All of the names you mentioned were fearless lovers of the faith. Thank you for recognizing these servants who could have easily been forgotten. Love, Phil.
Oh, thank you, Phil. Philip. I would like to say the White family was very, very supportive, and I was concerned that the book didn't turn out to be just about Trudy, but they were not concerned. They were very happy that it went the way it did. The book sort of wrote itself, actually, when people started sending in different stories about Trudy. I enjoyed it.
Gilla says, can you share a story or two more about Trudy?
A story? Okay, let's talk about Trudy's laugh. I don't think I'm not computer savvy enough to bring it up on my computer, but I do have it. But everybody mentioned Trudy's laugh, and some of the young people would say they knew where Trudy was, but because they could hear her laugh. And other people would say they knew Trudy was in the building because they could hear Trudy's laugh. We decided when I was doing some radio programs to try to get stories about Trudy, to find Trudy's laugh on audio, and we found a tape with Trudy's laugh on it. And then we couldn't stop giggling. We were in the radio station, and everybody in the radio station started giggling because Trudy was giggling. She had this laugh that would just make you happy. One of the things, I did bring the book, but I don't know if I can find it in time. But one young lady said Trudy encouraged her, inspired her to write a poem. And that just shows that Trudy could work with anybody, any age group, any cultural background. Trudy made everybody feel like she was their aunt, their mother, their sister. She just made you feel like you were part of the family. My Trudy story, one of my Trudy stories is Trudy lost her daughter, Annette, and I didn't know that until I lost my mother. And so Trudy said, well, since you lost your mother and I lost my daughter, we can be mother and daughter. So she made me part of the family.
Oh, nice. That's a great story. Sue Emmel has got some more comments. She said, during the teaching project at the Louis Gregory Baha'i Institute, at the end of the 5-year plan in 1979, we had devotions, study circles, children's classes, and youth involvement as part of our everyday activities. We had expansion, consolidation, and reflection meetings every day. We didn't have these terminologies, but that's what we did every day. The training received by the members of the community where I lived during this period were instrumental in a similar project organized under the auspices of our LSA. It served our teaching efforts in the entire 4 corners of the Southwest during the subsequent plan. So she's also agreeing that the way things were set up at Louis Gregory were a kind of predecessor to the current efforts that we're doing with the core activities.
Ann Brenneman reported the same thing. Ann came down initially, I want to say in 1971, and went back to New York. And what she learned she reported that what she learned in South Carolina helped them with their teaching in New York. And eventually moved to South Carolina, to Florence, and lived in Florence, I want to say 15 years. She's now in Virginia. But she said it helped her efforts in North Carolina. I heard that story a lot, that what people learned. Jeff Jane, who now lives in Japan, said he went teaching with Trudy and learned how to teach, how to do home visits by teaching with Trudy. He said he didn't know Trudy but like a weekend, but that taught him how to do home visits.
So she was accompanying people before we had the term accompaniment as well.
Absolutely. We thought we were accompanying her, but she was fooling us. She was she was teaching us how to be the person, the lead person. She was always doing that. She was accompanying us and teaching us how to do home visits.
Fantastic. Paul also asks this question: do you remember Don Irby, who was a Baha'i who was a TV broadcaster in Florence?
I do not remember Don Irby, probably because I was in Orangeburg for 25 years and moved back to Florence. I'm originally from Darlington, which is 10 miles from Florence. So I'm originally from what they call the PD area of the state. But I was not living in the PD. I was living in Orangeburg. No, I don't remember him. Sorry.
That's good to know. Shahla asks, can you tell us about any progress in reducing violence against women and about the book you have just written about the topic?
Yes, I can talk about that a lot. I won't, but the book has been published in actuality.
Fantastic.
Sooner than I thought. And when I started working in the area, there were very few shelters in the United States. There were no shelters in South Carolina. And now we have shelters in all states. We have a state coalition in all states. And in Puerto Rico, I forget another territory that South Carolina has. There's a state coalition. There are programs not only for battered women, but for domestic violence, for interpersonal violence, for children, for senior citizens. We have come a long way. We still have a long way to go, and the book is saying the only way we're going to get peace on earth is to get peace in our homes. It's a let's get this done story. It's not a poor victim story. It's a survivor thriver story. It has been published already. I don't know how to tell you to get it.
Amazon. Probably.
The website is Ivy's Books at Gmail. No, sorry, Ivy's Books 48 at gmail.com. IVEYS Books 48 at gmail.com.
We'll put a link up on the web page about your web talk also.
Okay. Okay.
Philip White adds, Don Irby was a great Baha'i from Los Angeles. He and his family pioneered to South Carolina and lived in Chera. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. They were very close friends of our family.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Philip.
So that's a little more information. How would you compare, here's a question I have, how would you compare the progress of the faith in South Carolina today with the progress of the faith back in the 70s and 80s?
I think we're getting more people engaged. I think we are not enrolling people in masses, at least not yet. As I understand it, what we called mass conversion back in the late 60s and early 70s was just a precursor, and that wasn't really the mass conversion, so we're not enrolling in mass yet. But the people who are enrolling are more engaged than they were before because we have something to engage them with. It kind of depended. When I became a Baha'i in 1971, it kind of depended on who taught you. For instance, if a travel teacher taught you, because you kind of get, I think everybody does this, you kind of get attached to the person that taught you. So if a travel teacher taught you, and then some other person came, maybe you didn't relate to that person as well as you related to the first person. The person that taught me was one of those chiropractors, the Jensen family, Lillian Jensen. I hope she's watching. Lillian Jensen and her husband John taught me through their late daughter, and her name just went out of my mind. It'll come back. But anyway, I got to see them for a year, and I got to see them like weekly. So I got very deepened. I think that's what has to happen for people to get engaged, is for you to get deepened. We don't use that. I guess we don't use that word. We deepen through the Rui courses now. So I think it depends on who you met at the time and how much deepening you got, how much you learned about the faith, and how engaged you got. That's just my personal opinion, because that's what happened to me. Lillian's daughter's name didn't. Lillian, call in and tell me what your daughter's name is.
I was thinking on the Facebook page.
I'm having a senior moment.
Yeah, that happens to me too. You know, I think of, I don't know a lot about the South Carolina community, but I think about Alberta Dees, who really became a Baha'i there, and the astronaut whose name now I've now forget, the first African American Baha'i astronaut,
Yes.
first Baha'i astronaut actually, who became a Baha'i as a result of children's classes in South Carolina. And really, the South Carolina Baha'i community has made some really important contributions to the American Baha'i community. And it's just very exciting. Yeah, Ron McNair, Steve Bedingfield,
Right.
just got in for me.
Duska, the person that taught me the faith, her name was Duska. She was a 4-H'er.
Mhm.
And that story was that we had just integrated, and like I said, integration is not unity, it's not even, So my children, the white children sat on one side of the room, the black children sat on the other side of the room. Duska could go back and forth, and I asked her what was wrong with her, and she said, I'm a Baha'i. And eventually took me to meet her. I went to meet her parents, and eventually they told me about the faith, and that's how I became a Baha'i. There was something else you said, having another senior moment.
Paul, you're talking about John Jensen, the blind chiropractor.
Yes, that's what I'm talking about. He and Lillian were my spiritual parents.
And I see also Philip says that Ron McNair went to the Grimsley's children's classes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice to see these details, actually. And Sue Emmel was also commenting about Trudy's laugh before you mentioned it and after. Clearly, it made quite an impression. And Sue also says, again on the Facebook page here, some of the members of our community who were trained at LGI went to teach at Indian reservations in New York, and 3 of us who were trained at LGBI were sent by the Universal House of Justice and the National Spiritual Assembly of Canada to teach the process in British Columbia. Their efforts to teach on reserves there were instrumental in winning the goals at the end of the 5-year plan in 1979. So again, the reverberations of the efforts in South Carolina really spread worldwide.
Also, there's a point I learned in 1976. I learned that there were 4 spiritual assemblies in Kentucky. When I was working, I went to Kentucky on a business trip, and I learned that Kentucky has 104 counties. Now, South Carolina has 46 counties, and in 1996, we had 32 active assemblies.
Wow.
That's got to say something. I mean, something really good happened in South Carolina. So there's talk about we lost some of the people. I don't think so. I think we planted seeds. And if we lost some people, are we talking about me? I'm not lost.
That's right. No, it's very clear that there was a very solid long-term development and process that was established. And there was recently an effort by the National Teaching Committee to go find, teaching office I should say, to go find some of these so-called lost people. And they went and found people, and people still consider themselves Baha'is. So really there has been a change of identity for a lot of people. And that's quite significant, quite significant. Let me see if I've got anything else here. I don't see any other comments. See if I can think of another question myself. Do you see, how would you compare, what do you see similar or different between what happened in North Carolina and South Carolina and let's say either North Carolina or Georgia? Why was South Carolina so unique, do you think?
Well, you had, I was looking for the poem that the young lady sent me. You had Dr. Louis Ventus on last month. And one of the things that Louis says in his book is there was so much racism in South Carolina. There was so much activity with the KKK. There was so much segregation in South Carolina. So, for me, as an African American born and raised and lived my whole life in South Carolina. When I went to Penn Center finally with the Jensens and for a meeting, and there were maybe 100 people there, and they were maybe about half and half black and white, or what I looked at as black and white at the time. And then there were these strange talking people. They looked like they were white, Persians, of course, but I didn't know who they were. And Sue Fouts was there, and I didn't know who she was either. But all these people loved each other. That's different. Integration is one thing. Unity is another thing.
Yep.
So when people, say 10 people, walk down the street and they are from all cultures and different backgrounds and different ages, and you see love, why wouldn't you declare?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't see a reason not to. Now, for me, personally, when the Jensens told me Baha'u'llah was the return of Christ, now, for some people who heard that, they thought it was, they talked about the Antichrist. I heard that. But when I heard it, I thought, well, I'm Christian. I'm waiting for the return of Christ. If this is the return of Christ, then I need to know about it. So I need to investigate. And so I investigated. I think in Dillon, for instance, where in 6 weeks there was 8,000 declarations. I don't know this for a fact, but among the black community, it was rumored that the Grand Dragon of the Ku Klux Klan lived in Dillon. And we most recently have had a school in Dillon to make national news because it was so bad. And it was a school that was all black. And it was all black because the white people probably started their own school, which is what happened when we had integration, is we still had all black public schools because white people started their own schools. So I think that's some of what happened. And the other thing is, things happen because Baha'u'llah wants them to. So Baha'u'llah was in charge, and that's what made it happen. Oh, here it is. I want to read you Rhonda Gray's poem that she wrote because she was inspired by Trudy. Title of it is My Greatest Pain. Every now and then it occurs. It's a feeling that I don't prefer. A feeling when someone laughs and calls me a fool and just assumes that I don't know enough to be in school. When I'm degraded or put out of place, not because of a crime that I've done, but because of my race, within me rises pain, anger, and fear. My only response is a tear. When I'm around, they'll say, watch your back, but my only crime is being black. They just say words, don't care if I'm hurt. I am sometimes considered to be below dirt. Just because I am not white and my name is not Jane or Polly does not mean I am not somebody. Maybe you should start to see the picture clearer. All the terrible names that you say to me is only what you see in the mirror. What you don't realize is that you're living in the past, and that the beauty and love God gives us will forever last. So look closely, open your eyes wide. The energy that keeps me going is my strong black pride. Rhonda has published a book of poems now with the same publisher that I just used to publish the Survivors Thrive book.
One person, Shahla, asks, what are the current conditions of race relations in South Carolina?
They are better. They're not, the Baha'is have unity. The rest of the South Carolina, as far as I'm concerned, does not have unity. But race relations are better. I was just commenting to somebody recently. Everybody can go to any restaurant they want to go to. But unless you're talking about a work group, what you see is white people sitting at their table and black people sitting at their table. You don't see a socialization. One of the Baha'is in Florence has suggested that we do more socializing in restaurants so they can see us, so they can see what unity looks like. Because you can tell when people really care about each other. But we are better. We still, it's like 2 steps forward and 1 step back. But we had to have the laws in order to integrate at all. And once you know a person, it's hard to be prejudiced against that race of people. So we are better. And I'm sure all the prayers, the Baha'i prayers, all the prayers of anybody are helping South Carolina. We're going to get there. Maybe not in my lifetime, but hopefully.
Eventually.
Mm-hmm.
Seeing if we've got anything else here. I think that's not new there. I don't have any new questions here. I don't know. We can wait another minute or two to see if anyone else signs in with another question. This has really been marvelous. I'm really very thrilled that we've been able to have this conversation. I in some ways feel like I still don't quite know Trudy, but I suppose it's very hard to get a real sense of her. She was only in South Carolina for 20 years or so then?
24 years.
24 years.
Uh-huh.
But she was right 24 years, I guess you could say.
I'm looking for the recording of Trudy's laugh to see if I can get it up. But I'm not the best. I'm not the best computer person in the world, so I don't know if I can or I can't. Okay, let's see. And we can listen to that if I can find it quickly. Come on. Here we go. I don't know if this works.
Hello, and pop. Hello, and pop. It's real loud because he wanted to talk to
That's her laugh.
When I was a youngster growing up, and it's been a long time, my mother used to always have us do the Lord's Prayer. And in that prayer, the end of it is, Thy kingdom come, Thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. And as we were growing up, we would say that prayer, and it's beautiful, and But as the world keeps changing, we would wonder, where is that kingdom? How can it ever be? Because everything is...
Uh-oh, I lost it. I'm sorry.
All right, that was her voice, huh? That was her talk?
Yeah, it was.
Fantastic. And thank you again so much. This has really been marvelous, Annette. I really appreciate it very much. I just wanted to quickly summarize the upcoming web talks of the Wilmette Institute that we have over the next couple of months. Next month, February 12th, Gregory Dahl will be talking about globalization and current events, a Baha'i perspective, which should be really quite exciting. Then on March 12th, Hushman Badi, who's a Baha'i economist in the United Kingdom, will give a presentation called Is There a Baha'i Economic System? He's done quite extensive research on the Baha'i passages about economics, and he's cast the net very wide, so we have a really very broad perspective on what the Baha'i view of economics is. Then in April, we actually will have 3 talks in a row on the 9th, 16th, and 23rd of April by Todd Lawson about the Quran from a Baha'i point of view. He'll talk a little bit about the Quran in general, how Baha'u'llah and Abu Baha used it, and sort of the enduring legacy and value of the Quran, not only for Baha'is, but for the entire world. And those will be, I think, groundbreaking and really significant talks. Todd Lawson, of course, has studied the Quran for a large fraction of his life, has been a professor of Islamic studies at the University of Toronto, and really has brilliant insight into the nature of the Quran. So I'm really looking forward to those 3 talks. And then in May, Jena Khodada, the daughter of Zakarullah Khadem, will be giving a presentation about her father, Zakarullah Khadem, the itinerant Hand of the Cause, which was a title given to him by Shoghi Effendi. Finally, I should mention our upcoming courses in February. On February 1st, Exploring the New Testament begins, and that should be quite a good course. We're working on improving it by adding some videos to it. On the 7th of February, The Bab and Baha'u'llah, Two Lives in One Story by Druzel Cederquist, based on her book, will be starting, and that should be really quite a good introductory course for people who want to know about the Bab and Baha'u'llah. We're intentionally making sure that the course will work well for youth, young adults, new believers, and such, and we're really quite excited about that. Then on the 15th of February, our good old veteran course, Islam for Deepening and Dialogue, will come back around, and then on the 22nd, a month from today, Hands of the Cause of God, Pathways of Service, a course designed to focus on the inspirational stories about the hands and how these stories can help empower us today to arise and do some of the things that Trudy was doing 40 years ago. So if you need more information about the Wilmette Institute, you can see our website, wilmetteinstitute.org, where you can click on various choices to pull up our courses. Each course will take you to a course description and to a registration link. Also, our YouTube channel, where all of our web talks are going, they're located. And then, of course, our 800 number, 877-WILMETTE, which is the toll-free way of reaching us. I hesitate to say 24 hours a day, but we do answer the phone in some rather odd times, I will say that. So that pretty much ends our broadcast for January 22nd. And again, Annette, thank you so much for this fascinating and exciting and inspiring presentation about Trudy. And we hope to see all of you next month for Greg Dahl's presentation on globalization. Thank you, everybody, for attending today.